Well, we could play Name That Tune with Ben Wright with this song. I'm sure you recognize that song.
No, I don't.
That's the CBS golf theme, the new one.
Oh, really?
I say new, it's about 8 years old by now.
Well, I mute the sound most of the time.
That explains it.
I've never been a great fan of radio shows for the blind.
Meaning people talk too much.
Yes.
On the CBS coverage now.
Yes. I never watched the last day of the 1986 Masters until I went to play in an event in Connecticut that John Nowabilski, who is one of the pros in Connecticut, puts on in memory of his father. And when I got to stay at his house, he put me in an armchair, got me a glass of Malbec, and pressed the button and I'd never seen the last day of the Masters before. And what impressed me most of all was the silence. There were long periods of silence, which I can imagine my old boss Frank saying, "Keep quiet, you bloody fool," you know. And that's the way it was. And it was so easy to listen to and watch because it wasn't this frantic gabbling over every shot. I mean, they talk over shots. Frank, if you talked over a shot, you're in danger of being fired permanently.
Who is the best golf commentator now?
I have no idea.
Really?
No, I'm amused by David Faherty and my old sparring partner, Gary McCord. But the serious ones, I like Johnny Miller when he's on, but when he's outrageous, he really is tasteless. You know, I mean, like the thing he said about my good friend Popeye from Australia.
Craig Perry?
Craig Perry. He said if Ben Hogan saw Craig Perry's swing, he'd puke. And Craig Perry was really hurt by this because he was winning the tournament at Doral, as you remember. And it really hurt Craig. And of course, he doesn't come here anymore.
You mentioned Gary McCord. People, when they know that we worked together on your autobiography and that we were on the radio a lot too, they ask, he doesn't really like Gary McCord, does he? You had a famous, I don't want to call it a feud, but was it real?
No.
Was there animosity ever?
No, it was a spoof.
Show business, huh?
Yes. What Gary and I told everybody who asked us, you know, they would say to me, "Do you really hate Gary McCord that much?" And I would say, as he would say about me, "It's your call." We never gave it away. We had the little air of mystery about it.
He was the empty-headed Californian failed tour player.
Exactly.
And you were?
A pompous British ass.
But you know what? That kind of theater that was going on in the middle of a golf broadcast I don't think that exists anymore.
No.
The personalities are not there, are they?
No. Frank Chikinian invented us. I mean, he would press the isolate key after I'd said something outrageous, maybe, and say to Gary, "You're not going to put up with that, for goodness sake." And of course, I didn't know that. And then Gary would light into me when we came back from the commercial break. And of course, he would do the same for me. Not going to take that kind of thing from the Californian Yahoo, empty-headed lout. And so he set us at each other. But then again, he was very disciplined. And if we overdid it, went over the top, he would say, "Quiet, let's concentrate on the golf."
What do you think of Nick Faldo? He gets a lot of work now. Golf Channel, CBS, he sits there with Jim Nantz. He's a complicated guy, isn't he?
I find him totally unrewarding. I don't like his use of the Queen's English. And I think he mutters a lot and talks over the shots and is always like Johnny Miller. They talk about themselves a lot, and that's not the game, in my opinion.
He's not well liked, is he?
No, no, particularly not at home in England.
Sir Nick Faldo.
Well, You know, when he won the Open at Muirfield, Scotland, and beat Paul Azinger, if you remember, Azinger bogeyed the last 2 holes. Excuse me. Nick, when he made his acceptance speech, said I want to thank the British press from the heart of my bottom. And that alienated them forever. They were only too keen to savage him. And I remember when he blew an Open, they had enormous banner headlines in the tabloids, Faldo, Foldo.
Can you imagine Jack Nicklaus saying something like that?
Amazing.
Never.
I mean, never. No.
Is he the greatest player ever, Jack Nicklaus?
Oh, yes, no question. I mean, Tiger Woods may be the greatest athlete golfer, but, you know, he hasn't beaten Nicklaus's record yet. And I'm glad to see there are signs of life in him right now after that 65 yesterday.
Got the first round lead at the Barclays, tied for the first round lead with Vaughn Taylor, and looks like maybe that new coach did him some good.
Sean Foley, yes.
Maybe he needs a little direction.
Well, you know something? When you've had a coach like he has, well, 2 of them, for a long time, you can't live without them because they're the crutch, you know, that you lean upon, and you go for help. He had no one to go to, and, you know, the poor boy's been in a real state of, well, total loss, really. And one can only sympathize with him in that respect, while you probably don't sympathize with him for what he did. I found myself defending him when people would say, is it true that he's a philandering devil? And I would say, no, no, no. Tiger's a perfect family man. And of course, I've looked really stupid when it all came out. So I was a little hard on him, probably.
Well, you and the whole Bill Clinton cabinet have that in common, right? Back in the day.
Absolutely, yeah.
Dan Olson is a touring professional from Michigan, or he used to be, and now he plays in events here and there, whatever he can cobble together. And I heard him on the radio the other day. Somebody asked him if, you know, Tiger Woods will ever be the Tiger of old again. And he said, well, now that he's not married, he's no longer a sex addict. And I thought that was a funny way to put it.
Yes.
Now he's just a guy.
Yes, he's just a guy. One of the guys.
Will he ever be the same?
I don't think so, but obviously yesterday there's a spark there still. But he doesn't have the air of invincibility that with which he used to dominate his rivals. I mean, he's just another guy now. One of the very good players, but there's a heck of a lot of good players out there.
He has a temper.
Oh, definitely. And it doesn't come out too well when the F word gets heard through the land on numerous occasions, and clubbing, throwing clubs and stuff, and bashing the bag. You know, he really needs to clean up his act.
Which player that you knew or covered had the biggest temper, the worst temper?
Oh, that would be an invidious choice. I really don't. I suppose Tommy Bolt, too. You know, but in a sense, I think that was half an act.
Oh, really?
You know, I think he put it on. A terrible Tom. But, I don't know. I would. Tom Weiskopf had his problem.
Did he?
Oh yeah.
You were very close with him.
Yes, I was, and I wish I still was, but he's given up drinking.
That puts him on the other team.
It puts him on the other team.
He's back in the broadcast booth for ABC, I noticed.
Yes.
You gave him his start, didn't you?
Yes.
Frank?
Yeah.
How did that go?
It was very difficult for him. Very difficult, you know. There are some people who can do it, it's like water off a duck's back. But I remember very vividly after Hale Irwin had won the Open one of the 3 times, he was up the tower with me, excuse me, at Firestone at the 16th hole. And when we first started, he And when we got to the first commercial break, he'd gone purple in the face, and he whipped off the headset and said, "I can't do it. I can't. I can't cope with all this noise in my ears." And I said, "Listen, take the headset off, keep it off, and I'll tap you on the knee once when it's your turn to talk, and tap you on the knee twice when you shut up." And it worked like a charm.
Huh, you coached him. You saved his television career.
Well, yeah, I might have done. I don't know.
People might not know that. When you're in the booth and it sounds quiet on television, you can hear the birds. The announcers, the broadcasters, are hearing something totally different.
Yeah, well, there are a lot of circuits that go through your head, and engineering and things like that.
The director's instructions.
All in director's instructions. Frank Chikinian, who is a very gruff on exterior. I mean, he plays the tyrant. Ayatollah, exactly. Was actually the quietest man.
Oh.
He was just sotto voce to you. I mean, even if he said, "You limey ass," it was very quiet. And that, of course, made him a perfect guy to work with. And there was never his equal in my experience. And I worked with the best guy the BBC ever had in Alan Mansell, who in the 60s made the BBC TV really good, along with his producer, Slim Wilkinson. It was never the same again. And now, they miss a lot of shots. And
if you had one more round to play, where would you play it?
It's a difficult choice, but I think mid-ocean.
Bermuda.
Yes. I've been fortunate enough to be a member for a very long time, overseas member. In fact, I was approached by the president of the club, who's now passed on, Ford Hutchins, one Friday when we were going to have the black tie dinner after the invitational that evening. And he said, "We'd like to make a speech tonight." And I said, "Well, I wouldn't like to, but if you want me to, I will." And he said, "Well, if you amuse me, I'll make you a member of the club."
That's pressure.
Yeah.
We'll be back with Ben Wright, the Emmy Award-winning golf commentator and writer. I'm Michael Patrick Shields. We're live at Crystal Mountain Resort in northern Michigan.